Hello. Hi, it's me, Latifa. I'm here to show you the books I read this year. My goal this year was to read more books than I read last year. There's still a few days left. I can absolutely do that, but also at the same time, I don't want to focus on quantity. I would say I'm kind of a slow person in all areas of life. I like to take my time with things, actually absorb. These books I choose to spend my year with this year. And there were lots of lulls and times and stretches of months that I didn't pick up a book, and I think that's completely fine. I did a little video like this last year, but I put it on Substack, but now I don't really use Substack anymore, and I archived the video. These are the books I read this year. First is Just Kids, Patti Smith. It's a very famous book. The prose was poetry, and it makes sense because the person who wrote it is a songwriter, but also it is a book so full with love, and I thought it was very romantic, wistful, yet, tragic story, which I thoroughly enjoyed. I felt like I was living beside the two of them in, I don't know, early 70s New York. Second book I read was The Woman Destroyed by Simone. I can't say her last name. I can't. It's very French. De Beauvoir. First of all, I am obsessed with this cover. It's so cute. And then second of all, this book pissed me right the hell off. This made me so angry. You're following the story of three women, and the first woman, I don't even think you know her name. I don't think her name is ever really discussed. But the first woman, I was so into reading her story. I was very frustrated with the choices she made, the way she viewed life, her relationship with her son and her husband. I felt like she was wholly narcissistic and wrong, and yeah, there's a lot to say. I don't want to spoil it, but yeah, I was like, girl, you were cool, and then I was like, oh no. I was just really disappointed in the way, especially because she's like an older woman. She's like in her 50s, I think. 50s or 60s, getting to retirement age. That's like a big part of her story, which I found to be really interesting because I do love reading from the perspective of older women. And I thought it was going to be something like a really tasteful reflection on aging, like the difference between the way women age and the way men age, and like kind of like age is like this I don't know, this like submission of power, but in reality, like personally I view it as like the ultimate acquisition of power. That's not what it was about. And then that really established a theme for the next two women you read about in this book, and I think it's worth reading, but I think this is not something you read if you want to like the narrators and the women you're reading from the perspective of. And that brings us to our next book. So I joined a book club in June, and for the book club we read Bonjour, Tristesse. I really enjoyed it. It's a really tiny book. I think this was a good one to read with other people. I posted my literary analysis on Substack, the discussions we had about this book, like my responses, I compiled and posted on Substack because I had a lot of thoughts and feelings about this book. So if you want to know my thoughts and feelings about it in a better articulated manner, I will leave a link to that. Next thing I read was Black Swans by Eve Babbitt. Sue me, I find Eve Babbitt to be really, really, really fascinating, and I cannot know enough about her. Last year I read Hollywood's Eve, which is Lily Annalick's sort of, I don't want to call it a biography, but sort of a dissertation of Eve's life. And in it, Lily Annalick describes Slow Days Fast Company as Eve's best work, and I'm gonna be honest, kind of like negates her other work, and kind of, I don't know, I just remember from reading that, what I took was like, oh, I've read the best of Eve, and then I read this and I was like, oh, I have not read. I mean, Slow Days Fast Company is really good, but I think this book is really good too. Like, it was very surprising because my expectations for reading anything else were lowered. Tangoland was definitely my favorite essay in this book because I'm also a dancer. I understand what it is to connect with movement in a very specific way, and I loved the way she described the Argentinian tango. It still sticks with me. Her ability to find a new scene, her relentless pursuit of the scene. Like her writing, I find it refreshing. I think it's like something that always reinvigorates me. I love that she's not trying to over-intellectualize what she is portraying. There's like an ease and a naturalness to I did read this, and I saved this for the end of the year. I find both of them to be really, really fascinating. This book was definitely mostly about Eve, and here's my qualm, and like, here's my qualm with Lily Annalick's kind of accounts of Joan Didion, which a lot of people have qualms. I wouldn't say I have as big as a qualm as others. She can make sort of these inferences on behalf of Eve because she knows and knew Eve. I feel like she makes similar sort of statements and inferences on behalf of Joan when she doesn't have substantial enough of anything to back it up. And like, she's making these grand statements about their relationship to one another off of these, like, you know, little tidbits. There's also a whole lot of self-insertion. This is truly her narration, which can be off-putting at times. Sometimes I feel like it's I felt like it was very repetitive. But ultimately I did like this. I did enjoy reading. Again, I'm like, I don't know if it was Lily Annalick that like gave me the Eve bug if I've been bitten, but I also can't get enough of her, and I just want to know everything there is to know about her. I was also talking about this with somebody on Substack, and we had this conversation about the appeal of Eve Babbitt specifically as like a black woman who is an avid reader of hers. And it was something about this like frivolous, inconsequential quality to her writing that can only really be afforded by somebody who never had to really support themselves, and if she did support herself, it wasn't for long. She got to focus on doing whatever she wanted to do, and I think that is, I don't know, it's like it's a good escape for people who feel very tethered to responsibility in whichever form, or feel just sort of unnecessarily grounded all the time and having to think about all these issues and worry about all these things and like worry about rent, worry about, I guess, yeah, like these responsibilities tied to being a human being. And then it's in the specific case of being a black woman, just there's a lot of burden by way of just existing in the world. And her writing and the way that she lived, feathery and light, it never really got too deep on purpose. And then in this book it really revealed like her sort of demeanor in terms of dealing with dark and heavy and grounding things, and it was very clear that she avoided these things and even, you know, sandwiched them constantly between jokes and stuff as a way to evade and not really sit with the heaviness. So like, anyways, I think it's her writing is truly escapist, and I think that I just find that appealing. I want my biggest problems to be like, should I go to the Polo Lounge or the Beverly Hills Hotel, or isn't that in the Beverly Hills Hotel? I don't know. That kind of thing, like the Troubadour and Barney's Beanery, like I want, and Ports, like I want that to be I wish those were like my issues. This is the last book I finished, but reading these two simultaneously or like back to back was really interesting because I feel like this book is just so interlaced with Liliana like as a person. So I think a proper name for this would be Didion, Pabbits, and Annalik. And it's like supposed to be like this biographical, and I don't want to make it seem like I'm somebody who's like biographies have to be objective and like sterile and like quantitative or whatever. Like I don't really, that's not my point, that's not where I'm coming from. But this book was, to me, very clearly written for curriculum, very clearly written to be academic. Like, this is meant to be in a syllabus. Like, it was made with that in mind, and it's very clear to me. And so reading this account, I didn't even tell you what this book is about. So it's called Dreaming in French, and it is an account of the Paris years of Jackie Kennedy, Susan Sontag, and Angela Davis. And it takes you through these women's relationships to France and the time they spent in Paris, or the significance of their time in Paris to them respectively. I thought it was fascinating. I thought it was really interesting. Just the three women in general, you would not think to group these women, and I think that was what drew me to this book. I don't even know how I came across it. I bought it on eBay. I don't know how I came across it, but I think I was looking for just Angela Davis stuff, but I really liked it. I'd recommend it, but also it did take me really long to get through because a lot of research is in here. A lot of names, a lot of books, a lot of philosophers. There's just a lot in here. Like, there was a mix of sort of like free writing, but it always came back to citing sources and evidence, and I think that's what makes like a biography, whereas I feel like this felt like more like a personal essay, like a really long personal essay, where you can theorize and you can infer and you don't have to have any evidence. You don't have to, which, I mean, there's a lot of stuff cited for sure, but like, I just think there's a lot that didn't need to be in here, and there was some comments that felt really, honestly, like verging on the side of unprofessional. This felt so full of feeling, this felt so full of opinion, this felt so self-inserted. I really don't know how else to describe it, and at the same time I did enjoy it. So I'm not saying that like, that this was the worst thing I've ever read. Like, I genuinely enjoyed reading this, but I think also like the sort of like informal presentation of this book is why I finished it so quickly, because it did feel like somebody was telling me these stories. It felt like a conversation, whereas this just felt starkly academic to me, and like there were these bits in here that like felt a bit more like a conversation, but then there were times where it was just like a little like dragging for me, hard to get through.